Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of the Mirandus Gentry. We are joined here today by Punjab, who is from the Farmers Guild that was created, and here with, with well, how's my voice? How's my voice?
Is this just me, or are you cutting in and out? I can't
Yeah,
tell.
he definitely was.
Yeah, he's
Hello.
Bonafide. There we go. Go ahead, Ray. Try
Okay.
again.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this beautiful day. This is the third ever Mirandus Gentry streaming episode, and we're glad everyone could join us. And also, we have a special guest, our first ever Punjab from the Farmers Guild, the Mirandus Farmers. And if you would like, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey,
Tell us all about it.
Dude, super excited to be here. Always love discussing Mirandus, dude. Speculation, dude. So great. So great to be here and talk with all these minds as we speculate.
Sure.
But
So,
go ahead.
that's why we're all here. But if you can give us a little backdrop on how you got involved in Mirandus and what led you down the rabbit hole to get involved and look forward to building this game up with the whole community.
Super quick, man. I've been in this space since 2013, man, and been a gamer, man, looking for a great game. And short story, man, it was Ember Sword or Mirandus, and I chose specifically Mirandus because the nodes, because I'm huge on the decentralization, man. So,
Great.
Jumped in a guild right off the bat, man. Ended up being Farmers Guild. It was just all about having farming assets, right? We're just going to help farmers out, and it's evolved into so much more. But as guilds roll out, man, just got to be flexible. We don't know what to expect with the game, and I just wanted to talk about this game, man, because there's just not a lot of information out there at all. So it's like you got to kind of speculate your way to it.
Absolutely.
And then I started doing this podcast on the side, and just throwing out what I think.
Yeah. Is it the same name as Mirandus Farmers?
Yeah, it's Mirandus Farmers. I just call it Almanac. I don't know. Farmers Almanac kind of like predicts the weather for the future. And I don't know. It just sounded like it kind of worked. But
you should drop that info in the comments for us so we can make sure everybody gets a chance to check out your podcast, man.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I thought it was super important. There was one question that I asked Bitbender one time. Actually, it was to Michael McCarthy, and it ended up being about the king powers, right? Like, what's these powers that the king gets?
Punjab, I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Hold that thought, because today's episode is specifically revolving around guilds, the functions of them, if they're even needed, the implications of how they might change compared to other games we might have played that were MMORPGs. So the focus of today is going to be guilds specifically, but you can go ahead and finish your thought on the kings and the conversation you might have had with Banjo. I just wanted to give the foundation of what we're here for today and today's episode. But go ahead.
The whole thing behind it is, as this game's getting built, McCarthy's on foundation levels, and there's a lot of discussion and there's a lot of speculation, and I don't think that he even knows what's going to happen. Like, there's you got your buildings, and these buildings have like a very basic purpose, how they're going to imply into the game. I think that's going to be flexible and developed on the way. And I think it's important that we have these discussions. And I think it's great that you guys are doing this channel. That gives people the imagination, and we can kind of make an audio library for Gala to pick up that give them ideas, because we can have an amazing game, man. I mean, I'm so bullish on this game, and I'm probably biased too, but dude, I think this could be the most badass game I've ever played in my life if it's done like right.
Sure. So, that's the main reason why we all got together and we started this, for not only our specific guild, which is called Rome, but to help build a stronger community and help garner all people to maybe ask questions that could help the team in the long run. So the more the merrier, as I say. But if we can pull up the first question, here we are. Simply, what role will guilds play in Mirandus? maybe not everyone has been in a guild before or played an MMORPG like myself. I'm not that well versed in my history of playing, although I have tampered and dipped my toes in. But Mirandus is going to be one of those games for myself, and we can start with our special guest Punjab, and if you want to just elaborate on your thoughts on will guilds be having any particular role in Mirandus, and if from your opinion, what type?
The single guild function, right, is just everybody that's into the same thing, I guess. I don't know. You can meet get smaller groups and meet a lot of people and build relationships, and maybe it's based on one ideology and everybody's like collective thoughts on that, or I don't know. There's probably a definition for guilds when you look it up. But for blockchain gaming, I think guilds in all that sense, especially maybe in MMOs, are going to play a way different role. And being that, everybody's playing these games for value, right? There's cost to everything, like $5,000 for an elf, man, right? I mean, so what you're going to look for in guilds is they're going to need a source of revenue to fund their endeavors, whatever that might be. And for Mirandus, I'm feeling that having deeds, and then the people that have these deeds need to probably make their own Discord, because, going back to like the king powers, every deed is going to have its type of, powers they endow to certain people, right? So it's kind of like a Discord, but your mods within the game are the powers that you give out. So you're running a community in that deed with all your shopkeepers. So
right.
How do you keep contact with all these people? Well, you do your own Discord.
Mm-hmm.
And
go ahead.
You can just see guilds form out of this. And we can just go. Listen, I can go on this the whole hour, man, whatever.
Sure.
I'm stopping. But you can see different types of guild. As long as revenue is involved, I think that is what's going to be important to the guild to fund what they're going to do. Like, let's just say for basic making potions, right? Normally you had your guild guy, he'll make some potions for you and provide them to the guild and all that. That can't happen anymore because this guy's putting a lot of work and a lot of money into making potions, right?
Sure. So
you can offer discount through the guild, but
hey, sorry, Punjab, but talking about the potential revenue streams that could come from the play to earn economy is a question that we actually have further down. But the like you said, a role of a guild that could be played for Mirandus would be simply bringing people together to unify them under one goal, which might be harvesting resources, building out in a more timely fashion the deeds they have, or the buildings that they might need to raise up to even partake in the play to earn economy on a grander level, if you want to say that. But anyone else has thoughts on roles that guilds will play in Mirandus specifically or generally?
So I definitely think that they could be a great stepping stone after free-to-play players leave the Grand Sanctuary. They have some gear, maybe a bit of gold. What do they do afterwards? They need a purpose, and it could really be kind of like a quest unofficially. Just like tasks given to you by deed owners, landowners. You get sent to a different place. Yeah.
Sure.
I think it would be interesting if they use sanctuaries as a means for bringing people into the game to be connected with guilds. So you could either come into the game, choose a guild, and that would depend on which sanctuary you landed in. Or if you're someone that says, you know what, I want to remain unaffiliated, there's a sanctuary for that. But that would be an interesting way for guilds to find new people and to be able to outfit them and give them, help bring them up to speed as they come in. I think the overall function of a guild in Mirandus is going to depend heavily on what the developers decide to integrate, because that's where the bottleneck will be when it comes to supply chain, when it comes to interaction between the guild communication. I mean, are we going to have an external communication source, or can we do that within the game? Will you be able to assign roles that give them access? So if this guild member is this rank, then they're able to do this at all guild-related buildings. You know what I mean? So it's going to be limited to the functionality that the developers provide guilds. But I'm definitely excited to see what that's going to be.
What I find interesting is the talk there's been around maybe guilds will become obsolete, and I think the market has already spoken on that issue. You know, we've had almost decades of MMOs now, and there's always some sort of function that surrounds that community, and that's a guild. And I really think it's the guild that keeps the people in the game. It's the community. It's not just the, scoring the next best sword or best boots. There's always this community that builds, and we've seen marriages, we've seen all kinds of crazy stuff show up out of guilds. I think the added layer of there being an economic perspective within the levels and the leadership of the guild, even within the, we'll call them haves and haves nots within the guild, right? We're going to have people who are very heavily into play to earn, and then we're going to have people who are starting at free to play, and then we have everybody in between. So what does that look like as we talk about how the guild builds itself and how it decentralizes within the game and builds supply lines and things like that? There's going to be people who are funding that, so to speak, and then there's going to be people who are supporting it and kind of thriving off it as well. So I think that's the new dynamic that I haven't seen in an old MMO guild.
Yeah, hat tip to Punjab. I just meeting you for the first time, man, but we seem to agree on a lot of things already. I'm real big on decentralization as well, and that was the reason I got into Gala games in the first place. Was when they were selling the nodes, I was like, okay, well, they're selling nodes. That's putting them in a position to go decentralized and be a stronger decentralized ecosystem. So I really like that idea, and I think that moves into the guilds as well. I think that from what I've seen and what I've learned studying cryptocurrency for the last few years is that decentralized systems tend to beat centralized systems. That's why even Microsoft has, went and did GitHub. Decentralization is very powerful, and I think if we have the tools to build guilds in a decentralized format where everybody has an equal piece of the pie, so to say, and everybody's equally invested, and everybody kind of already knows what the rules are going to be coming in, I think they're going to be very powerful.
Yeah, I'm seeing in the future your guilds are going to be DAOs, right? You're going to have to acquire a DAO, and you can probably look at Polyant to play a role in that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
For those that aren't familiar with the term, can you kind of explain what that means?
Decentralization?
No, DAOs. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So a DAO, it's funny how us humans are with these words. People will adopt a word that's new and kind of change the meaning of it, right? Socially. But the word DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, right? First word being decentralized, second being autonomous, and the third being organization, right? So you're talking about an organization that is, at its core, there's no central power structure, and that being the case, you don't have that central point of failure, right? You don't have a single individual who can cause everything to go down because of their own personal greed or because they quit the game or whatever, because they want to sell the guild all of a sudden. I mean, we've seen that happen, right? People have sold guilds and obviously the guild dies shortly after that, right? So, when we're talking about something where people are investing a lot of their life, basically, because, when you have money, I mean, that's a thing that you receive because you gave your time and your effort and your energy and you put it into that and you stored it in money, right? So when you put your money into something, it's going to be very important. And that's where guilds and Mirandus are going to be different than anything else that's happened before, is because people are actually putting their life into this game for the first time. And that's going to be a very powerful thing. And I think
you bring up a good point, man. If I could jump on that really quick so I don't lose it.
No problem.
What you're describing is we're going to be intertwined and locked in to a guild financially. I mean, in the past, if you wanted to jump a guild, you just took your treasure and left. But now you have this idea you might be financially connected or committed to a different organization. That brings a whole nother level of not only requirement for the guild to really vet who they're bringing into the guild, but also as an individual player to really think about how you're intertwining your finances with other people that you technically don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's going to be a huge point of responsibility for the power structures in these guilds to take it a little bit more seriously than we have in previous games, because it's not going to be a joke to some of these people that we're recruiting and bringing in. So. Go ahead,
And-
Punjab. I'm sorry, Stephanie.
Oh, go ahead, Punjab, if you had any.
Oh, maybe that was you. I'm sorry.
That pretty much sums it up. I mean, it's going to be super important, man, to have this committee of people to do these votes on how your guild rolls these assets. I mean, DAOs are going to be needed for the assets, really, not so much the guild, but for the assets the guild owns.
Right. To talk on that topic briefly until we get to our second question, the DAO more or less would almost make it much easier to not get into too much trouble with people's funds that are all invested into one NFT. Because if you did have a particular percentage in ownership, you can simply just tell or update everyone and take your funds, and someone else could buy your portion, or you just give it back and it goes to the the percentages reallocate of what you had back to the other existing owners of that deed, if we're using a deed, for example. So if a guild doesn't go down the route of a DAO, then it could get really sticky. If there's lawyers or paper contracts, PDFs, and everything, it's if everyone has one, they have to e-sign something. DAOs are relatively new, and we have a question, one of our talking points further down in our episode that we'll go deeper into that. But if we can bring up a second question, if there's not many comments or things to talk about, here we go. So, simply, will guilds be needed in the same way with Mirandus as they are, or as they have been in other MMORPGs? So we've talked about how they might become better, right? In many ways, but I'm curious to know if in my opinion, it would be needed as far as playing the game. As every other game, there's a community that's built that strengthens the overall popularity of the game and the longevity of it. But I'm curious to know your guys' opinions on if the guilds are needed. Would you even need to be in a guild if you played Mirandus?
I think that it depends on a number of factors. If you have the resources and there's a thriving marketplace, and let's use potions, for example. If you can go and buy the bottles, buy the herbs, whatever you need to craft the items you need, then you don't necessarily need a supply chain if you can make those things happen. So if Mirandus is set up in such a way where that isn't how it works, and it's going to be very dependent upon this building and this shop owner working with this other shop owner, and it's going to be a group dynamic that actually makes these things come to life, then absolutely a guild is going to be of the utmost importance, and that a person being solo is going to have a much harder time, I think.
Yeah, I think the only way you probably won't need to be affiliated with a guild in some way is if you're just an adventurer, just in like the most strictest sense. Like you only go out just to buy what you need to get out there, adventure, and bring it back and sell it. That's pretty much, I think, the only way you can avoid being in a guild and having fun at the same time.
Right. I think it would be pretty difficult for someone if they had nothing as far as land or in-game assets at all. You would be solely dependent on your networking skills and who you know. So it would benefit you as that lone wolf to just join any guild, because there would be a structure there, if not from a sanctuary doing the basic quests and getting your basic armor to then just be on your own to eventually end up in a guild. On the other hand, if you are a whale with lots of money and you bought a Town of the Duke, congratulations to the new purchaser of the Town of the Duke. And
Archduke, right? You're an Archduke.
Yeah, right. Sorry, Town of the Duke. What a right. So
You're welcome for those elves.
Right, and the elves. Congratulations on the sale and then the buyer, the seller and the buyer. But if you have that type of money to invest in these in-game assets, and the economy will eventually get built out, you might not even need to be affiliated with a guild, because you would have an economy. Well, but on the other hand, how would you place if you don't have enough buildings in your Archduke? So is it the dynamic of having a lot of money, buying a lot of assets in game, and then you're almost dependent on the community that you can or can't be a part of. But if you aren't, it would probably work against you. But I can see how, as the economy grows, you'll have people reaching out to you, whether you have a structured guild or not, to rent and place their buildings on your plots in your archduke, if we're talking about an archduke. And you wouldn't necessarily have to do anything but just either receive payments for the rent for these building owners and whatever fees you get from all the transactions that take place in your deed. And you could just simply do that. But if you're not having a lot of money, the route you would have to take if you would want to enjoy the game, in my opinion, it's always more enjoyable when you're part of a community, is to join up in a guild. Any thoughts?
I think most people have played game. Most gamers have been in that situation in the game where it was the community they were a part of that kept them playing it at a certain point. There was the friendships and the bonds and the loyalties that they had created in that game that kept them involved in it. That's how you play a game for 10 years or whatever, right? At the same time, I feel like it's important for any game to allow the lone wolf aspect, to allow the free-to-play lone wolfer to have a lot of fun and possibly make a bunch of money or invest a bunch of money and continue having a lot of fun with that without being crushed by the guilds. I feel like those are two different games in one ecosystem, you know what I mean, that are both going to be equally as important. Right quick, I wanted to shout out my man Blarg the Zombie. He posted an interesting comment here. As usual, I think he's here with us every time. But Guild versus Crafting Association. I think this is an interesting concept because, if you read like old like novels and stuff like that, or you play the old games, there were guilds and there were crafting associations sometimes, or there were thieves guilds, or there were mage guilds or things like that. That were crafting associated, not power and control associated. And that's an interesting dynamic. I think that might pop up. And I think Punjab, you're actually part of your guild is actually more of a crafting association, is it not?
We had a lot. We're trying to be flexible, and there's a lot of like discussion still going on what kind of guild we want to be. And mine was always logistics and networking. But I don't know how Mirandus is going to lay out a map for us, because you don't want to end up on the map with 20 farming hamlets clustered together and all the retail shops are way over here. You need to like set this up on the map so it looks well balanced. And that's something we wanted to go for. And then you didn't want 2 taverns next to each other, or 2 wood shops next to each other with 2 deeds that are next to each other. So we kind of wanted to enter into that, but we need a map to do that. And then on top of everything we're talking about, like with 2 guilds that I think might exist, you're going to have your adventuring guild, and then you're going to have your economic guilds, right? And I believe smart contracts, and I've talked about this on my podcast once, that smart contracts can destroy logistics, networking, and economy guilds. Because if you can run a dex on each deed, which would be in the form of questing, so like a billboard, and some adventure runs into your town, and they're looking for work, and there's a billboard, and here's all the shops and what the shops want, and the shops post on with the billboard what they need. Like, I need 20 bottles, right, for my potions. And then they can accept that and collect the reward on a smart contract. Well, then you just eliminated all the networking and logistics just from the adventure picking up through the decks, right? That's in the deed. I think that would be a brilliant way to just run through that whole game. You no longer need guilds or networking between 2 people. You get that farmer coming from the Citadel all the way out to a farm that's a little cheaper than a farm that's closer to the Citadel, that with a cart to pick up all this stuff from maybe a farm. You could see that, but having dexes or these billboards that give player quests to players would be a really, really cool way to do that.
You just blew my mind, Punjab, because one decentralized decentralization believer to another. You just outlined an idea where you're right. The more decentralized structures become, these MMOs are going to be a test of how societies can form and how they can operate in the future. That's just crazy to me that, you're right. Guilds might, in Mirandus, at some point become obsolete if the DAOs and the smart contracts are good enough. That's a crazy opinion. But
I'm gonna run with that because I think there's an idea there. We've talked about the lone wolf We've talked about the whale and what they would bring, and I think there's an analogy here that applies to something outside the theme of Mirandus. And in some dystopian books or cyberpunk books or movies, there's this idea of a mega corporation. And if you look at kingdoms or citadels as they're being set out right now, they're owned by these corporations that are going to manage them and leverage them and market them the way they want to leverage them. And if you think about the idea that you're now going to have a corporation up against another corporation within the game of Mirandus by way of kingdoms, you're going to need all the things that support that corporation. And are they going to lease out to people that support what they're trying to do? Are they going to ask and get like free to play or pay to play type of players working for them? And will there be a symbiotic relationship between kind of the Citadel mega corporation and the free to play players that kind of build this cohesive organization bigger than a guild, and may even be competitive with guilds to some degree within Mirandus?
Absolutely.
Powerful idea, Manja.
So you kind of just started our third question of our live stream, which was a perfect segue. So what about guilds might change based on how the game is built? So the play to earn economy is the X factor here, because if any one of these developing games and the company made Mirandus, it would be like every other game you might have played with some changes here and there. But with the play to earn economy, it really spins everything on its head, and there can be some interesting things that take place when it comes to the economy of the Citadel versus an Archduke versus a Deed, a ranching hamlet. So what would what do you guys think about the changes?
I think that when we're just talking, this kind of also dovetails into the last question and the last comments we had about, will there be a need for guilds? The thing that I think will always, not always, maybe always, cause the need for a guild is there are going to be aspects to the game that are going to rely on people working together, cooperating together, even if it's not immediately of benefit and value. Like, hey guys, right now we have an opportunity. If we haul stuff from this location to the other location, we're going to have an advantage but it's not something immediately available. As where if it's only contract based, then it's going to be like, hey, if I don't get a benefit from this now, I'm not interested in doing it. So I think the cooperation that you get with people deciding to work together, even if it's not an immediate benefit, is what's going to call for guilds to still be around for quite some time.
I mean, you really have these different groups that are going to be working for their own self-interest. So I think what's going to be different in guild, I guess, dynamics and interrelationships is how you might affiliate or go against another guild and how that shows up. And without going too deep down the rabbit hole, because this could be a whole nother episode, but how does PvP work between guilds in a non-PvP environment? There's potential there when there's money involved. So
oh yeah.
So really think about there's going to be a new sort of dynamic that's one guild against the other for money, which is going to really change how guilds work and how they interact with one another. And it may even get pretty heated on social media when two guilds really start going after each other's revenue.
That's us making the lore now. Let me give you some good examples of some guilds that I just kind of thought up of. And I'll give you some real guilds too. So I'll give a shout out to Family Man. He's got one called Bright Blades Revelance. And he had some deeds. And he's going to use the deeds to fund his adventuring and all that. But he mentioned something a long time ago in chat, which was escorting, right? Escorting across, people across different lands just because of the monster factor and all that. So if we got monsters attacking gates and destroying walls, these could be like men for hire to defend your deed. Or if you have that farmer coming from a large citadel, he could be a bodyguard while you're carting this stuff for payments, right? And so his guild is like just a bunch of troops for hire. Another idea is like a service. So a shout out to the Drunken Ducks Tavern, right? So they want to run a chain of taverns. So with that, they can run. We're having games in the taverns. They could run tournaments, right, in their taverns, and they can front up prizes. Or I don't know if you guys ever remember poker runs, like from bars, where they could do their own poker runs. So it's kind of like a service guild. And then you got your community guilds, and that's like Winterfell. And that's two guys that I call them the Duke Boys, but they own a town of the Duke. And they're self-sufficient, and they're just strictly community, right? So they're a self-sufficient community with their own farm, their own town, and outpost. And so there's just different ways your guilds can, I know, just using your imagination, that you can find ways to bring in revenues or how to make a guild work in ways you would never normally think of how a guild works in a traditional game.
You know, you guys, listening to you guys talk about these ideas, it's actually piquing my interest for Mirandus even more, because I was initially kind of put off by the lack of desire to have like an open world PvP kind of scenario, because I've usually enjoyed that quite a bit in the games I've played. And now we're talking about this economic warfare in such a way that that's even more exciting than regular PvP to me now. And I'm thinking, you know what? This game is going to be way more interesting than I thought, just because we can't physically, or, we can't just go kill somebody, that's taking our resources or doing something that we don't like. That means that we have to go after them economically, which is, a little bit more complex, but actually a lot more fun if you really think about it. So this is great.
Real life Game of Thrones, man.
Yeah, man. Seriously.
I was just thinking, actually, would be interesting if you could. So I know a lot of people don't like to play PvP, but how would you prevent someone from stopping and going into a mine, like that has mithril or diamonds or something really important? What's stopping someone else from just going in and just stealing resources? And I'm not talking about stealing resources from a cart. I'm talking about just running into the mine, mining what they need, and getting the hell out. Because if you have no PvP aspect, what stops that?
I think the challenge is how the deeds are going to look. We've talked about mine deeds. They've briefly mentioned them and said, to be announced or in the future. And I don't see how you protect your mine unless there's some sort of keyed access, like your homes. Otherwise, it's open to whomever. So I guess the question to Gala will be, are mines something that is open to all players when you own one, or is it only open to the people that you allow inside? I think there's pros and cons to both.
I think they might have to do something like you stake a claim, and therefore it becomes yours for a period of time, very much the same way. The question of when you grow crops, is someone able to just come up and snatch your crops, or is it only accessible by the person that controls that deed in that land? So I would imagine it's going to be a similar system.
Because I was thinking one way they could potentially make it interesting is you could using whatever the in-game system is, gold or anything, just make it really expensive so you can't just drop it, but make it like a PvP zone for a set amount of time. So if someone is trying to steal your crops, you can spend 1 million gold. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's also preventing probably a couple $1 million worth of that resource being stolen. So you can just drop a PvP zone, and anybody that crosses it, or if you know someone's going to try and cross it, you can just drop it really quick and prevent them crossing it for a Mirandus day or something. That way it helps you protect your assets. But they should make it also extremely expensive, so you can't just drop it in the middle of a town and then people just start going ham and ganking each other.
I think there's a good balance there. I like that idea of having a protected time and then a contested time, and whether the contested is PvP, which I think would be awesome, or non-PvP where people can just get access.
Auction.
And maybe there's a lesser chance of them finding something rare if it's not their deed or something like that. But I like the idea of making it, approaching it from multiple directions. And I see that Jesse posted something from Michael there. Can I use a mine deed to claim a dungeon entrance, and can we sell out boss access? Anyone have any thoughts on that?
That just seemed to pertain to the conversation we're having already, as far as how these things are going to work, and I think it's just a good little bit of input on there. I agree that I don't like the idea of things being locked away. I don't like the idea of content being locked, whether it's mines or bosses, right? At the same time, I feel like if you are a strong enough guild and you want to stop somebody from doing something like that, you should have an avenue that's not going to break the game or completely lock off access to everybody, but a way of preventing or discouraging people um, is proper. I feel like so being able to maybe, like you say, make it a PvP zone for a certain amount of time would be a good addition, I think.
Yeah.
And this is a bit off topic from guilds, but if we look at how Gala has been selling deeds so far, and we have this idea that there's going to be mine deeds coming, is there going to be different levels of mines? Is there going to be a diamond mine? Is there going to be a gold mine, copper mine? And if there is, and they're tied to a financial purchase up front, are we going to have just the super high-end play-to-earn people getting all the good assets and further kind of the Pareto effect, right? That 20% are going to get 80% of all the assets just by the nature of their purchases up front. It's just something, I mean, again, it's theory craft. It's nothing to do that Gala has said this one way or another. But if you think about what they've done so far, I think there's something there.
Yeah, sure. I was going to mention, but before we get to Game Guru's remark and the questions, thanks for watching, everyone, and for the support. My mind went along the rails of if on the other hand, if there wasn't mining or dungeon NFTs or resource NFTs to purchase, which I think they should be not owned by anyone. It should just be in the game, the resources. But what would be nice, as far as guilds are concerned, would be if we can claim our stake to a certain area that produces a certain resource. And this is again theory crafting, but if anyone knows this happening in other games, let's say a guild claims stake to a resource mine or a resource node, and others are still able to go there, but there might be a percentage of resources that go to the guild who owns that plot or that resource node. So you're not going to get the full benefit of mining all from that one rock in the cave or the resource node, and there can be ownership of resources and the nodes. But yeah, just throwing it out there, maybe.
Alien Worlds functions a bit like that.
I'm sorry.
I was saying Alien Worlds functions a bit like that. When you mine on land, you're actually paying a percentage to the landowner.
Okay.
That's exactly why I brought this comment up, right? Good point, both of you guys, because Entropia, actually, when you own land in Entropia online or Entropia Universe or whatever the game was, people who hunted or whatever on your land, you got a percentage of that. And that would be a happier medium, in my opinion, to somebody being able to lock away access to a mine or a boss or something like that is, hey, yeah, if you're have enough value where you can purchase something like this, then you just get a piece of what everybody else is doing in that area. You know what I mean? And that way it's still open to everybody. But it creates another revenue source for Gala and another revenue source for the community.
I want to go with spawning mines. You mine the mine, it collapses after it's done, and then it spawns somewhere else. And that location's unknown. And that's where you can start pouring into your choreographic exemplars and stuff that can maybe chart these things out, or where they pop up on map. I don't think McCarthy would actually go for the mines working that way or any other further deed ownership or some sort of ownership. I think you find it, you can mine it out, it collapses and despawns, and then spawns somewhere randomly else.
Yeah, that helps to prevent resource hoarding for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it also keeps cartographers on with their bringing in all that dough.
You always got to figure out these use cases for everything that he's made in there. I don't know. The mine of McCarthy, man.
Dude, that map you sold me with that mine location, there was no mine there.
Yeah. Now we got cartographers being hunted through the town because they're selling dummy maps.
Bounties on cartographers.
Well, maybe you need the map to see the mine. Maybe that's the case for that.
Oh, was it like in what's that? Like in Jumanji, I think that's how they had it. That one character, the Jack Black character, where he was the only one that could see the map. Everyone just sees a piece of paper, but he can actually see what's on the map itself.
There you go. Yeah.
Right. Well, I guess that kind of leads us into question number 4, which isn't specifically guild related, but we can throw in the aspect of a guild and how it might intertwine with how much revenue can be generated by deeds and buildings. So, if as soon as reading the question, I think if we're in a guild and we have our infrastructure set up to be a certain way, we have the potential to earn more. We don't know exactly what goods and resources might cost up front in the in-game currency, and what transaction percentages are going to go to the treasury of the game, but back to the owners or to node owners. These are all things that would potentially be in a white paper. Hashtag when white paper. But we can go down that rabbit hole of the potential and what that might look like. We could probably compare it to other games that are out, that NFT games that are out right now, and what we could just have a conversation of what might the revenue look like, the generation of revenue.
So before we get into the generation of revenue, I just had a thought that, one, we don't have guild halls, and if we did have a function for guild revenue, guild halls would seem to be the deed that would help manage that.
Sure.
So hopefully if they bring a guild hall of some sort in, again, I don't know what building plot size they would put it on, but it would make sense that whatever DAO we're talking about, or whatever distributed guild financial piece we're talking about, would be done through the guild hall.
One thing that Guild Wars was very good about is the guild halls were actually instant, and I felt like that was a really good aspect. I mean, it's great on a number of levels, but one of the many levels is that you're not taking up land space, and you're not having to generate a deed just because you want to try to form a guild that might not work. That allows smaller guilds to try out and try to come in and see what they can do. And it gives them a space to do their own plotting and planning, which is something we all want. I mean, we're going to be okay, but I want to see that competition of other guilds trying to be formed and such. And then also, if they were to do something like a guild battle type of scenario, you might not want that messing up the entire game necessarily. I mean, obviously we're going to have the economic warfare, but if we want to just have some nice PvP matches between guilds, I mean, those could also be instanced. And that's one thing we haven't talked about with Mirandus at all is whether or not they're going to have instance areas or not. So I don't know if that's even a thing. But going back on the topic, I'm sorry.
Well, I like the idea of instance guild halls. I've seen that done in the past, and it allows you to make it as big and upgradable as you want, right?
Right.
I think the challenge is how do you represent that in Mirandus and still have the instance? Because I just can't imagine going up to a building and clicking on a flag, some nondescript building that every guild in the game comes up to and clicks on. It seems like there might be an opportunity in Citadels to maybe put 5 or 6 guild halls that have different looks, or that can be rented even from a Citadel owner, to be able to rent out guild hall space that's already pre-built in the game would be cool, even if it is instance off of like 10 guild halls on one kingdom.
That sounds like you need revenue.
Yeah. One thing that could go in guild halls is imagine like a big table in the middle, and all of the cartographers could come and add their little portion of the map to it, and it could become like one big war table, like with loads of pins in it, and all the leaders could like speculate over it. I imagine that would be very cool.
I think that's my gala "Did you hear us" suggestion right there, because that's an awesome idea.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
So how much revenue can be generated by deeds and buildings? Yeah, this kind of went a little bit nuclear when I was just asking the utility of a deed. But I think in its most basic form, a deed itself, the only thing we really know is that you can lease building plots to deed owners. That's what we know. And we know that there's going to be a hell of a lot of competition. If you have a deed, there's basically 19,000 buildings lobbying for a spot to be placed. So I don't think it's going to be a struggle for deed owners to be able to release out. I think it's going to be a matter of like, what can you get? Because there's going to be competition. What we don't know is, are these terms like as in month to month? Can I say, for the next quarter, I'm going to give you this great deal. You pay up front kind of thing. Will you also be able to rent out your farming plots to a farmer if you don't want to do that, and you get a percentage? Will you be able to tax the sales of things that happen within your deed if you own a town? These are all things that are completely unknown, but if those are features and functions, then it offers up a number of different ways that you can make money for having a deed, which is all the more reason for a guild to perhaps gather the resources to get a land deed. When it comes to buildings, it's again a lot of unknowns. We don't know if it's just related to you have a building, you show up, you sell some stuff. Are you going to be taxed on that? Are you going to have to pay a portion of your earnings? Will you be able to lease out or loan out your shop to other people and charge them a percentage of what they make since you own the building? These are all great things I hope they build in, but just a lot of unknowns at this point.
And how do you track it? I mean, I don't think there's any secret that people who are spending money here are looking for a return on investment. And I don't mean that in the securities term of like a node, right? So we can stay away from that piece. But within the game, people are not spending $10,000 to just have a pretty house.
Not a Barbie doll house.
No, not at all. So they're going to want that money back. So is the return better if you're a deed owner and you just lease out your plots? Or is the return better if you're a deed owner and you buy your own buildings? I think that's going to be the challenge, is where the return on investments are and who outside of game is going to be tracking that stuff, and what kind of culture or technology is going to build up around Mirandus just tracking this stuff so people can make the best financial decisions. I think that's exciting stuff.
I think that's a great point, Banjo, because I mean, at the end of the day, we're all on Team Gala, we're all on Team Mirandus, right? But we all also are smart enough to know that the wolves are at the gate, as it were. There's a lot of MMOs coming out on blockchain right now, whether they're space or fantasy based. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff coming out, and I think whoever figures out the I don't want to say ROI. So I mean, but whoever figures out how people are going to seriously earn in their game first, is going to be the winner. You know, whoever's, you know, just like you see with Axie Infinity right now. I mean, Axie Infinity is a very simple game. I'd have never looked at it, and I'm interested in it now because people are making returns on it. You know what I mean? And it's going to be the front runner for a while because people are making a lot of money. Some people are actually paying their bills off of Axie Infinity right now, and I think that Mirandus is positioned to be the front runner on the MMO side, to have a really good quality game where people are earning. But like you say, if people buy a bunch of deeds and buildings and they don't see a return, the other games are going to start looking a lot more attractive very quickly.
Well, let me throw out some numbers then. Let's make this fun. Let's throw out a number, right? At least for the deeds, okay? Okay, so yeah, this is going to be fun. This is what it's about. Speculation. All right, so your plots, right? Say a 1x1 is $1 and a 5x5 is $25. And let's go on monthly. Is that conservative enough? So if I want to rent one of my plots of my farmland or one of my stands for $25 a month, do you think that shop can make $25 a month in this kind of market? I think it's conservative to say yes, even if you cut that price in half, right? So that means a 10x10 would be $100 a month. Can a 10x10 make $100 a month for whatever building is there? And you add a whole farming hamlet together with all those numbers, that's $1,000 a month. And if you cut that in half, that's $500 a month, right? So that's being $50 a month for a 10x10 would be the 500. And if it was what it was, 10x10 is 10 times 10 is 100, then you would $1,000 a month for a farming hamlet. That's just a farming hamlet. Then you can level up to bigger deeds from there and kind of add that up. Is that conservative enough to say that's what you can make? And it's all going to depend on population too, population of the game. It could go a lot higher.
I think that 10% of what the original store price for an out of the gate monthly, I think that is would be conservative. So yeah,
that's what I've been thinking. Like, okay, well, maybe a farming hamlet can pull in a $500 to $1,000 a month on a conservative side, right? Who knows? You know, you get guys putting in their buildings, man. If we're going to be short on buildings and there's like not enough spots for them all, not only are you going to have rent, but you might see these deed owners being like, well, there's a deposit too. You get the deposit on top of the rent just to secure your spot, right? So who knows what this shit can make and what people's going to do, right?
So have
And speaking on that, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, have you, with those numbers, have you kind of extrapolated that into all the deeds and properties in the game? Because that seems like a lot of revenue to have moving through a game, new revenue, right?
I don't know. I think yeah. I mean, you can 1650 for a Village of the Viscount. I thought I'd come up with, but that's just using that multiplication number as a.
I'm looking at a macro level, not deed by deed. So if you think about the numbers you're talking, does that mean that $1 million a month in new revenue needs to move through Mirandus in order to facilitate those numbers? Or are we just all the deed owners, stroking each other off, and we're just paying each other back and forth with our money?
That's where you come down to population, man.
Yeah. That's where it comes down to those tiers that I mentioned in one of my last videos, so that the free to play is what's going to be the population. That's going to bring the masses. And then, of course, on the far end, you got all of us that have these NFTs. But if we don't feed that middle piece, or the people are able to make micropayments, whether that means, hey, I'm going to spend $50 to get myself some in-game currency or something like that to be able to make my life easier in game. I'm not looking to spend a fortune, but I want to spend a little bit. It's that stuff. You have to have some new money. You have to have something feeding the economy. Otherwise, it's just us playing with ourselves.
Yep. And I would hope that, we're all promoting it. We're trying to get people to come in, man. I hope it'll be a really great game. I mean, people just maybe flood in, but a lot of new games coming out. This whole blockchain concept is just taking over.
What do you think that would be on that note? Because that really is going to be the feeder that feeds into this question of how we're going to make money with deeds and buildings. What should a person that maybe they started as free to play, what type of ways can they buy into the game in small amounts, 10, 20, 50, $100? What types of ways should they be able to make their life easier for small micro amounts?
Even World of Warcraft. How much would World of Warcraft cost a month? Or even your mobile games, you're throwing $10, $20, I don't know, a week, a month at it. I mean, as you see more players come in, they might be throwing more money at it. It gets, you got your play to earn. But if they did the dexes like in the deeds, your play to earns can come in and just crush it too, right? It's a real option to get money for free, right? Just playing the game. But yeah, you need money coming in, but
what are they doing? Are they buying a loot box, like an adventurer's kit that gets them some basic armor and a weapon, some food, some resources?
Yeah, they need the food. The food's going to be a must, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to have to buy the weapons.
Could be cool to buy like a couple weeks stay at an inn for that amount of money.
Yeah.
Right. It would have to be just enough supply and time for you to, if you're going to play on a regular basis without your food spoiling because you don't have a storehouse or whatnot. It would be just enough time. And I think they would tell you, hey, if you bought it, it shouldn't expire. But if we're talking about it being realistic and you don't have a refrigerator or anything to store your food, it should expire. But maybe just for this loot crate with all the supplies, it doesn't expire. And I guess you can take your time because then it would turn people off coming into the game, purchasing these types of loot crates.
But it keeps them playing for a window of time. It's like, oh man, I'm going to make use of this 2 weeks because I have stuff that's going to be gone. My room and board will be gone. I might run out of food.
There's
Things
not
like
space
that.
for everyone all the time to just be there.
At least the horse.
So if we put it in perspective of another game, if we look at WoW, World of Warcraft, and at last I could find in 2017, they were making about $2 billion a year in revenue on WoW. And if we think about that and that was through subscriptions primarily. So, even if Mirandus went to a subscription model of $15 a month, there's a lot of opportunity for revenue there.
Right quick, Magic, what was that subscription? Was it $20 or what was it?
I think it was $14.95, at least in what I read.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so $2 billion on $14 a month and all these things.
Right, which is huge, right?
Yeah.
So if you think about that revenue, and in that case, Blizzard was taking all that revenue, how is Gala going to set it up to where a portion of that is split into the game where the pay-to-earn people are getting a piece of that action? Because hold on that thought. So one, we own the buildings, we own the deeds. On the other hand, the node owners own the node network. So Gala has kind of decentralized some of its cost structure onto node owners and deed holders and building owners. So how is the revenue going to come towards us if they go to a subscription model?
I don't know if they go to a subscription model, but I would think the way the economy works in the game is the money just constantly circles, right? As new money comes in. It's got to be how it works, just like a normal economy, right?
Yeah. Well, there's going to be an off ramp as well, right? So you're going to expect people to move either to cash or to other assets in other games.
Moving in and moving out.
Well,
But the point I'm making there is that's a $2 billion game that's pulling in $2 billion. So if you think about it from that level, I'm a little bit more comfortable in how these deeds are going to pay off in the long run.
Yeah, I think as far as you're talking about with the subscription model, it would have to be something where they were taking that money and putting it right back into the economy, whether they were stashing treasure chests for new people to find to where they could get a little something, to where they would want to buy a little more. You know what I mean? Like maybe they get a sword, but now they need a shield, or maybe they get some food. And then Fancy Hat and Jesse, you guys both were talking about some things that had me thinking about, when you were talking about the taverns, Fancy, I was thinking about how smart contracts allow so much flexibility that you can actually rent out your tavern to somebody for 2 hours a day at a certain time, and 2 hours a day to another person at a certain time, and you can have people coming in all around the clock based on their own play times and their own time zones.
I wanted to make a point on the subscription model now because we're talking. I feel like that is becoming obsolete itself, although very lucrative for a business to generate revenue. But I think the new subscription model is the time that people are going to be spending on the game to play and earn. So the more people on the game will make the company more money through the percentage that the treasury receives from people mining, trading, buying, selling, and where we as owners of deeds and assets in the game will have a portion of that. So you'll most likely be able to buy a loot crate to get started and feel better than a peasant, just with nothing, naked, coming out of a sanctuary. But then we have the sanctuary. So the game seems like it's going to really help everyone getting in and give them a head start. It's not going to be like Ark Survival where you just drop down and you literally have nothing to buy, and you really have to grind to get to a point where you're not dying every 5 seconds just respawning by a dinosaur or another human being.
You get into the question too of like how long does it take to get your return on investment? Like what's an appropriate amount of time? Right,
and this is why talking about maybe what we can make could give us a better ballpark around that. But as comparing what we're talking about with Mirandus to other existing NFT games, we don't even have to talk about WoW, although the experience and all of the memories of what they could have been without NFT gaming and play to earn. We have a lot of games that are being built that have some percentages without even the land play coming out. We have many games that have a structure and detailed information of what you might be getting. And prices fluctuate, but if the in-game currency is going to be what it is, and it's just strange to me, and it makes me think how it's going to look with Miranda specifically, because some games you'll be able to make way more money. For example, Axie Infinity, and there's many different avenues to make money. You don't even have to play the game. So maybe in Miranda, you won't have to play your own avatars. You'll make money by renting them out or lending them. Or you can flip resources. It's so many ways to make money, but how much? We'll find out.
I'll answer that question with regards to length of time.
Sure.
For me, and this is just me personally, that for the high amount of risk that in speculation that is involved now at such an early stage of development with so many unknowns, I would say I would like to see a return, like my actual investment returned within a year of game open.
Ooh, that's aggressive. Considering we know how much you spent so far, that's aggressive.
Hey, you're looking good on the elves, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So so whether that means you're flipping and saying, you know what, I'm going to get rid of some of these resources because now there's more people that are interested, or for example, with the deeds, like I said, 10% is what I would figure you could make a month that still factors in that within a year's time. So I would think that early, because you're so early adopter, that I think it should be reasonable, because if not, there's a lot of other places that with that amount of speculation and high risk, you should be able to see a good return within a 1 year time. And I'm not saying 1 year from today, I'm saying from the time game kicks off.
Well, I think in 1 year after that time, Jesse's going to be funding the GalaCon table service for Rome.
And also,
on what Jesse was saying, I think there is a window that can be eclipsed. I feel like if people go, say, 3 years and there's not a return, I feel like the game will probably die. And I think that if people get a return very quickly upon launch, obviously the game is going to explode. And it's a sliding scale. Mirandus could end up landing anywhere in there. But there is definitely a time where the game is going to eclipse itself and just die. And there is a moment where if they capture it properly, this game will take off and it'll be like, wow, because it'll be the first mover and nobody's going to be able to catch up.
One of the deciding factors is, and we don't have to answer this right now, but I would love to hear all of you share your thoughts on this. If we came into this game ourselves, we didn't have anything we have now, and we came in after the start with nothing, what would we need from the game in order for us to say, all right, I'm going to stick around here. I'm going to play this. This is fun. I'm enjoying it. I'm going to set up shop and build within this game. Because if we can't answer that for ourselves, then how is someone else? What do we think other people are going to think about that later?
So if I look at that, and I think that's a great question, and if I look at the closest parallel I have personally, that's Elder Scrolls Online, right? So I joined, I paid a little bit of money. It was on Game Pass. I played it a little bit and realized I want more from the game. So when we think about subscription, we look at old subscriptions where it was you needed to pay $15 a month to play, or now they have this new idea of subscriptions where you get additional content or exclusive enhancements or I guess skill progression, right? Bonuses. So there is an idea of being able to pull money in monthly and give something that is enhanced to what's already there past free to play. So I can't see how you do a pay to earn model where you don't have a company like Gala bringing in new money monthly to push through the system. I just don't see it working.
Absolutely.
I think affordability, man, is what's going to really matter. If you're jumping into this game and you own nothing, I think affordability should be something that brings in masses. Like, and that comes down to like me naming the price up $1,000 for a farming hamlet a month. So, you buy something from a stand. How much should a piece of bread cost for a new player? It'd be like, I don't know, pennies. Should it be pennies? But they need a lot of bread throughout that for some time. So, yeah, it goes into affordability to keep the retention of the player and the engagement on top of that. But you don't want to be some player, a lot of these blockchain games, man, it's not for a kid to just jump in because shit costs so much, like $500, man, right? Just buy something. So just to get in for free to play, I would really like to see this game have a lot of affordability just from the players themselves, that brings in that population and just blows up like with just mass microtransactions.
True. Go ahead, Bonafide, you want to? We have Jeffrey.
All right, I want to. Punjab was just making some really interesting comments, so I want to get right back to that. But I saw this in the comment section, and it's really important that we address it. Are there Mirandus developers in this discussion?
There can be.
There can be, and they're welcome. And we do actually love the developers very much, just to be honest. But none of us are affiliated with Gala in any way. And we are not here giving any kind of financial advice, and we don't speak for the game at all. We're just simply a bunch of guys that are in love with the idea of Mirandus and trying to figure out how the game can actually work and move forward and grow in a good way.
Amen.
Yeah, Jeffrey, the answer to your question is no. They are not. They're currently building it in a bubble, and that is my greatest critique, because these are the kind of conversations with the community they should be having as this is being built.
Agreed.
You're absolutely right there, Jesse. Just to highlight that, I mean, the information vacuum is what caused us to do this podcast because there is an information vacuum and it's gonna be filled by somebody. And I, for one, hope I'd rather it be us, people who actually love the game and want to see it succeed, than what could have otherwise happened.
I think there's an opportunity, and the first person who sets up this website is probably going to have something, but there's a number of different styles of social media websites where you can put a question and then the community upvotes the question. I think there's an opportunity for an AMA type website. It could even be across platform, across games, but where somebody puts the question and community upvotes it, and then the developers get like the top 10 questions that are on people's minds. I think those are the types of way we could address the biggest elephants in the room that the community thinks are elephants in the room.
All right. Yeah, that would definitely help because now as many questions come in that we give great props to Bitbender for trying to get to all of them. But as the game grows, there'll be even more questions. So the most important ones that the community think should be answered would be upvoted to the point where you can't necessarily not ignore, but you can't miss it because it's going to be a pressing issue.
Yeah, and in support of that, I think it's fair to share the community that we have given Bitbender a list of questions, and we would love to see the answers to those AMA questions anytime you got them, man. We'd appreciate to hear what they're about.
Last communication from Bitbender was that he is trying to nail down McCarthy on an AMA. So thank you, Mr. Brink. We look forward to that AMA soon.
Very forward.
And I will say that they did, the Gala Games did open up that AMA channel, which I think is a very good thing. When they get to them, obviously, because there are different things, information embargo, things they can't say because it'll give too much away on their end, even things where they even might think it's a good idea and they haven't even thought of it. And I just think it's a great way of opening up to the community a little bit.
Sure. With that being said, I just wanted to make a note on the revenue generation. I made a note here of the incentive for players to play is earning. Sure, you'll have fun playing a video game, but the main, let's not just be naive or delusional here. People are going to be coming in, staying because they can earn. And whether they play more than one NFT game to earn more from different games, it's all requiring your time invested. So if we're going to be playing the most of your time in Mirandus, you should be able to make more money. It shouldn't be capped at a certain amount per player because then that's not going to last in the long run. And just to reference Axie Infinity again, because their coffers for the treasury have tens of thousands of dollars, and they're taking like a 4% off of each trade or purchase or Axie breed when you can breed the Axies. And the payout structure over the years from the first 2, 3, 4 to 5th year is already out to the public, and it's coming directly from the treasury. And the percentages that people will be earning in a year are almost unbelievable. And there's a chart that a community member made that I fell upon. I could probably try to get it, but this information is readily out there. There's community members talking about it, and it's been a thing before the recent explosion in popularity of the game. And from what I read, the top percentages of earnout, and this goes back to us with Jess said within a year he would like to see, and I agree, it should be within a year, and then we should know what the second year entails and the third, and as it slowly decreases or increases because there's going to be more people playing, there's going to be more transactions on the chain taking place. It'll vary depending on the popularity of the game, how many people play, but the most percentage you'll get from the game is playing the game. That's the most money, the highest percentage. And secondly is going to be the staking aspect of the game. So I'm not sure if there's going to be any staking rewards for staking the governance a coin in the Mirandus ecosystem. But it's just nice to know these things, depending on how far the developing team has come with thinking through all these things or hiring the right individuals, because there's so much talent, there's so much already existing individuals in the space that have cross different platforms to help one another, because we're all in this one ecosystem. The revolution of gaming is upon us, and we're all in the trenches together. So asking for help is never the wrong thing. So I'll just end with that.
That's a great point, Ray. I think it's really important for everybody to understand. I mean, we're about to see a huge shift in gaming, and the NFT gaming space is going to be extremely competitive moving forward. And as going back to what you were saying, Ray, as far as bandwidth, I mean, people aren't going to be playing games anymore if they're not earning. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
People are going to be playing the game that they're earning the most on the most. And they're going to play it until they stop earning on that one. And then if they have a time window where they can only earn so much, they're going to move to the next game. And they're going to play that.
Right, but those are going to be the people who are coming in as peasants for Miranda specifically, because they're not having any previous invested money in the games. As far as if we had deeds, we're going to play until we get our money back at least, because then if it makes sense and if we can feasibly do that in a guild or just as a lone wolf, or if you did buy a deed or a building or networked your way to have your building on a deed that's not yours, but you're totally correct in that. Where you right now you play games because you enjoy them. There's no incentive monetarily, but you play the games that you like the most. But now, if you need to pay bills and you're wasting your time playing these games that just take your time, you're probably still play the game even if you don't like it because you're making money, right? But if it's not enough money now, there's that other layer. You're gonna not play that game and play the next NFT game that comes out that you might like and to make more money. And so this is the interesting dynamic of how, depending on how the I'm going to say what's in the white paper. Depending on what's in the white paper, we'll see if there's not one, whatever. But we'll see how it all.
You just blew my mind, man. I think that games where people are not earning are going to die because of the NFT space. I think you just remarked on something that's remarkable.
I think you hit it too, man. And what I'm hoping that Mirandus hits this on is like they just have a really great, fun game to do that in. I don't want to see one of these games or all these games start to be jobs for everybody, right? It's taking the fun out of the game and it turns into an earning and getting as much as you can, and that's okay. But I hope in Mirandus, and I believe they'll go for that, just have a really great game to play on top of the earning, where you'll take a little less, but just to play a fun, great game.
Absolutely. Well, with that being said, we could go on to the next question. Getting back more focused on the guilds instead of the potential of revenue. So how are current guilds being structured with DAOs?
Are they being dead on arrival, or do you mean?
Well, the 80-20 rule applies to everything.
We got a spelling error
there. But that's okay because DAOs are relatively new, and there are experts knowing a lot of them and how to use them effectively, and some are still learning. As I would say myself, I'm one of those on the road of learning how to deal and operate DAOs. But in relation to guilds, I think it's such a wonderful thing because you can be relaxed knowing that it is decentralized, and if somebody wanted to either leave the guild or add more money to own a larger portion of the ecosystem of that guild, depending on, there's so many avenues you can take, and it could all be put up for a vote. It's not going to be, a dictator at the top, and so there's a lot that could be. We could talk a whole podcast full of this, but.
It's an interesting concept because if you think about DAOs and how they're structured in the crypto world, there's always a foundation, right? There's always a group that's there to look over the, in a decentralized manner or maybe even centralized manner, there's a group looking over the health of that DAO. And I think if you look at it through the guild lens, and if you run a DAO as a guild, there has to be somebody who's maintaining the structure of that DAO. If we go fully autonomous, then it becomes what, like Monty Python, that autonomous syndicateless commune, right? Do you have that, Jesse?
Bring it up.
Right? We're not a guild. We're an autonomous and I can't even say it right now. I can't even say it. You can read it. But at the end of the day, you get the point, right?
Anarcho, syndicateless commune.
Thank you, Bonafide. It was a tongue twister for me.
It is.
Fast.
It's hard for me, man.
But we don't need a leader, right? We don't need a king. We don't need a leader or maybe even a council, right? If you've got these people who want to be completely decentralized where they rotate leadership and things like that. So I'm making fun with the Monty Python stuff, but the leadership structure could change with a guild as a DAO for sure.
I think there's a lot of gray area between fully decentralized and dictatorship, right? And like Punjab was mentioning earlier, decentralization is very powerful. So if you are not decentralized enough, you're going to get beaten. But like you said, it's kind of hard to. It's almost impossible to build something as a DAO, right? You have to have leadership in order to have a direction to grow in the first place. Um, but then you get into that gray area of, okay, when do we decentralize? How much do we decentralize? When do we let go of the reins? Just like riding a horse, right? How much control do you take and how much do you give away? It's going to be a balance in that for sure.
I think when it comes to the specific guilds revenue generation, it can be decentralized because it'll be structured in a way, I guess, depending on the guild and what percentages the workers or the members of the guilds, or how much a guild member would produce as far as resources. They'll get an allocation, and that would be automatic, not necessarily automatic, but it would be known by everyone that this is what was voted upon based off of how much we could make as a deed owner, with everyone working online, playing and earning. And I think it takes a lot of stress off of, I guess, a larger group of people by having a vote on because then everyone's satisfied. Like you won't have someone in a community who's just like, oh, these guys they're crap because they take so much, and and then there's talks in the community of like people not liking how much is allocated towards them in a guild, or what resources are given based on how much. Yeah. So if this is all going to be in a DAO, it'll keep the game more entertaining and satisfactory for most people. That's my opinion.
I'll give you a little example how it works with the Mirandus Farmers. So
That'd be nice.
we're structuring this way, but we need eventually if you have assets, you're going to need a DAO because it takes the trust out of it. Because some people, somebody's got to keep the keys to the assets, and that's the purpose of the DAO, is to keep the keys to the assets where votes can control the assets. So when we started the Mirandus Farmers, I think Cratius was our leader, right? He is our leader. So the first 20 people in the guild, those will be called the founding fathers. I was number 20. So he then just gave the guild to 20 of us. There is no more leader. We're in the process of creating a very complex constitution, right? That gives, because we bought a node, the guild bought a node, and 23 of us chipped in money to buy a node. So somebody's keeping the keys, right? So this is where DAOs come in place, and you would want more assets. We'd like to get more assets, but so we all have to vote. And it depends on what the vote was. If it's got to be 75% of the vote for financial issues that are big, or is it like a 50-50? But we're trying to act as a DAO in the guild, and then we can hand it after the constitution. We might be able to just hand it off to the members, and members can make decisions, and then they take it to us for the vote. But until we have a DAO, this is the process, right? So it's just important to get these DAOs eventually, for sure.
What you're describing there, Punjab, is something that seems to me could lead to the next step in this, since we are dealing with real money and people are gonna want to have a voice. We might see DAOs, and then we might see duos, which is like a digital unionized organization. So if you think about the Farmers Almanac, and if you collectively gather all these farmers into your guild, do you have the ability to set prices for the greater game? I mean, do you have the power, I guess, is the question I'm asking. And within that, your structure, the Farmers Almanac, do your members feel like they need to be represented, so they set up sub-organizations within your guild? The idea that you could unionize in a video game blows me away. I mean, it's just something that I can see being done in the long-term lifespan of a game like this.
Well, Cratius had the idea. He liked the idea of being a guild for guilds. So the guild leaders, you just get these guild leaders, and they kind of sit on this seat. But I don't know, like our DAO, like the way we got it set it up with the node is because founders initiated this investment, 50% of it, whatever the node generates, goes to the founders. And the other 50%, that is for the members and that is for the guild for whatever we would deem they want to need it for, whether it's to help transport or we buy an asset and it's available to the whole guild. Like right now, I think we were wanting to vote on buying an exemplar. I kind of voted against it, but it's not up to me. It's up to the greater community. And what we do with that exemplar, it could be, this member needs it to do this. So we let him use that exemplar, right? So there's value for the member in that.
Yeah, I was going to say for the greater good of any guild, when it comes to Mirandus, it might be a deed that would benefit the guild as a whole versus just one exemplar. Because then who's playing with the exemplar? Is there a vote on how you share it? Because it could get pretty complicated as far as like the numbers in the guild versus what particular assets you have.
And renting. You got to have that renting feature because it's bound to that account.
Right.
That's what I was going to say, Punjab. You have to rent it out basically and then give the income to the guild and even the guild themselves, guild members have individually.
And that could go into another thing of what guilds do. If rentables are a thing, you might be having guilds fund like dungeon runs or whatever, and to get this one item, right? And then your guild is nothing but renting out items. That's how it's bringing in its revenue.
That just gives me a great idea because I'm an old, MMO WoW min-maxer type, right? And I think Banjo's mentioned before on this podcast about how there's going to be these guilds or these teams that are going to get the exact best lineup of exemplars to go in after that dungeon boss, right? So if your guild was to invest in the right team, then you would be competitive, and then you obviously would pick the best players from amongst you to go do it. But that's an interesting concept.
Every time I hear exemplars or just avatars being rented, one of the questions that pops into my mind, speaking of WoW, is reputation. Is there going to be like kingdom reputation between kingdoms, and how's that going to play into someone that you rent an avatar to that just goes and ruins the reputation?
Kill on sight, yeah. Kill on sight.
Exile for life.
Especially me with my little Mumson, right?
Okay, we'll patch that in.
Stop pickpocketing everyone in the game. All right. But I would like to mention a guild that's one of the largest when it comes to again Axie Infinity, but they're claiming to be a DAO of DAOs, where the assets that they purchase with the revenue that's generated from their play to earn members of their guild goes into a fund, which is decentralized and like we're talking about, gets voted on by the majority who are interested in that particular game. Let's say we only had Mirandus in one guild, and fine. We're all going to vote on what monies are going to be allocated to what in-game assets. And then that deed, if it was a deed that was purchased from the vote of everyone, it would go into an address, a separate, MetaMask address or blockchain address on the Ethereum network, and then that wallet is fractionalized, and then the ownership goes towards all the members. So if it's 1%, because so you just basically you fractionalize the ownership of the wallet that holds the asset, and that's how it would be completely fair. And and it's based on a vote to then change anything from that point on. So if there's a designated wallet that holds these assets that, let's say, I would own and I have access to the private keys without a DAO, then that's just a recipe for disaster, because we, depending on how many members are in the guild and the intentions of the guild, there's shady characters. You would never know. But if you can fractionalize the assets in that specific wallet, the wallet itself, then that's, I would say, the truly trustless DAO route to go. When it comes to, we're talking about money here, like with lots of plots of land, and even if it isn't, it's a lot of money to somebody if they're only paying $100. So I think everyone would appreciate that going forward in the guild that they're going to be involved in down the line.
The challenge is that code doesn't write itself, right? So somebody's going to have to write that code, or Gala's going to have to incorporate it directly into each game that they build. I think the challenge right now is Gala Chain, as we know it, is still being built. Right. So how does a developer build on something that doesn't even have a final product yet?
Sure.
Which means this idea of having a DAO that builds directly on Gala Chain is a ways away, and hopefully, the community can help inform what their needs are in reference to that, whether it's Gala directly or a third-party developer. But from what I understand, Gala has been pretty clear, at least some of the developers within Gala, that they don't want to rely on other blockchains. So I don't know that we're going to see DAOs built on Flare or DAOs built on Ethereum that are going to work on Gala chain. And matter of fact, one of the things that Doc said is, it was a negative comment, I'll paraphrase, but it was something negative about Ethereum virtual machine, which is really what a lot of different developers use when they're building on other networks. So my hope is that in whatever node roadmap or blockchain roadmap that they're talking about, they're very clear in what is being built for the community to hook into on blockchain, on Gala chain. Because if you don't have that, DAOs aren't going to work.
I think your DAOs are going to work on through the vaults on Polyant.
Well, then Polyant needs to start talking, or somebody needs to start asking them questions.
Yeah, they got the website. You should. Yeah, there's some issues over at Polyant. At least there were.
So that begs the question then, if not on the Ethereum, but on their own side chain or main chain or through Polyant, then because YGG had like an AMA and it was mentioned how there's a third-party company that you're able to fractionalize the wallet on the Ethereum address. But if we're no longer going to be on Ethereum address, then will Gala Games or Polyant give us the ability as a guild that own deeds and assets in the game, do that separately outside or on whatever chain that we're on? It doesn't have to necessarily be on or by the Gala chain or the Flare network chain or whatever chain that we're going to be on. If we're able to just have assets, because let's say it's going to be mandatory to take our assets off of our MetaMask, right, and have them on Gala Games chain, and then from that point on, what I'm talking about now, as far as decentralizing the wallet with the assets in it and fractionalizing it, that's not going to be a thing. So now, the amount of decentralization is just less than it would have been, as in relation to what the guild's goals are with fractionalizing the ownership of.
Here's how they could make it work on a different chain, and I'll be brief. If they were to create a smart contract, let's say on the Flare network, where the asset actually transfers ownership to the other person who's holding the lease, if you will, and then that person puts up like 2.5 times the collateral. That way, if there's a theft or somebody absconds with the deed, there's that collateral sitting there to pull back from and regain your investment, so to speak. That's the only way I see it working, because the person who has the NFT has to be able to slot it into Gala's blockchain.
Okay, I see. Well, I see nothing that we're talking about is not possible, and with all the money that these companies have, it's totally possible. So if we're all going to be talking about these things and it's going to be developed in a way that's in favor of and that helps everyone, then that's what's going to happen, and it's going to help the whole ecosystem grow and the game itself. But I would, if anyone has any other comments on that topic, we can get on to the next question. And
real quick question.
Sure.
Banjo, you're pretty involved with Flare, aren't you? The community.
Yeah.
Have they ever mentioned anything about Polyant? Or them going to Polyant asking about the vaults?
No, I've not seen anything about Flare as its relationship to the Citadel doing anything other than, they did the AMA with Hugo not too long ago, and then there was the kind of the little bit of a burst in social media around the crypto area being the queen. But beyond that, I haven't seen anything with Flare talking about its intentions with the Citadel or Polyant being on Flare for that matter.
Okay, because they had an AMA. Polyant had an AMA because I'm involved in their community. They did an AMA. I asked the question, hey, did Flare ever reach out to you about the vaults? And then they give me big, pretty letters that say maybe. So
all right.
I don't know if
all
you
these
heard
NDAs,
that.
right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, that's all I have.
Cool. Yes, it's important to keep up with not just Mirandus and Gala Games, but the other projects involved. So thanks for that asking, and to be continued.
I like how Polyant does their AMAs. Their style of doing it, where they have a Google Doc where you submit your question, and they pretty much get to all of the questions. From my experience, what I've seen them do, I like that style.
Yeah, there's not that many people, so you get a lot of attention too. I mean, it's way underlooked.
Right, right. Something to consider, along with the upvoting of the community's most concerning questions. That would be great. But as far as the next question is concerned, it's more of a fun question, not so much related to money, as we've done enough of that. But how can we differentiate guild members or places in game at a glance? Do you have a specific color you want to rep for your guild? A specific set of armor that you're all trying to achieve to wear? A flag? Could we have flags? Could we place those flags? That would be pretty cool.
I think the better they get this, the more exciting the game will be. Because when you show up as a group, like Rome, we show up in the game and we can fly our colors, and you go to a building that has, the Rome flag flying, and we can go as far as to maybe give guild discounts and things like that. The more stuff that you can put into the game to spark that camaraderie of people showing up and building something together, the more you're going to get people wanting to show up and be in the game and come back for it.
Yeah, there's many different ways they could go into it. In World of Warcraft, they use a tabard. They could also go for a belt buckle, perhaps, of like the insignia, or even a cloak of like just the flag. I think that would be pretty awesome. But that would all depend on being able to like change in-game gear and how it looks. But,
customizable gear. That's great.
Many different ways they could do that. Yeah. But
one thing
I would love to go ahead. Go ahead, Ultra.
One thing I was hoping in Forges was you could make the same armor with the same stat type, but it gives you the ability to shape how the armor looks. So you could make it more of like for Banjo Samurai. If you wanted to go with samurai armor because he wanted to flex his gamer tag game, he could do that. We could do more Legion style looking armor. In that sense, and it doesn't change the stats of the actual armor itself. It just changes the look.
Yeah, it could be like a skin recipe type thing. Like you're able to buy this type of skin if it's like a plate, because it'd be quite ridiculous if you could like make a big warrior like just dressed in a robe. But,
it would be pretty fun too. That was a good one. But I just thought about the blueprints for being able to do this can be drops randomly on the map or from defeating a boss of some sort. So now the guild needs to work towards being able to acquire this blueprint to then craft these types, or have the ability to craft these types of shields that are individual, or a belt that how we want it to be shaped. That would be a pretty cool thing, because there will be guilds. And if right out the gate we're just able to put up a color and a flag and a shape of a sword and then that's cool. But if we can all work, if there's like a race, it'll help engage people to play longer, because you want to work towards helping your guild become situated with the colors and all the things that would come from that blueprint NFT, if it is one, or just however it's going to work out that way. So now you have one guild with their colors, and how did he do that? Okay, well, there's many others or ways to get it, but you have to work towards it to now, because that would show the camaraderie of a guild. We're all working together, and it might take more than one person to just get it. So you have to work together. Maybe 10 people have to go in a dungeon and then now the whole team could have a certain color they could choose from and a shield they could shape.
You know what?
Go ahead.
One thing I would like is to see emotes custom to guilds. I know we are quite fond of the Roman salute in our chat. Like if we could perform that in game, that would be good.
That would be pretty cool.
Something else that would be pretty cool with guilds is if you could have like a medallion or a ring associated with your guild, and as your guild status improved, there'd be an associated buff with that. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
You're onto something there with that shit.
Jesse's selling his jeweler assets out there. He's putting it out there, right? So I think it'd be awesome if you could. I think guilds have to have a visual representation in game, right? So there's something cool about the idea of going through a citadel and seeing the Roman quarter, right? It's all us. We own it. People know that they can go to us to get the best prices. I'm putting that out there right now. Come to Rome if you want the best prices. If you want, the best armor, and because these bigger guilds are going to have their crafting side, they're going to have their adventuring side. So there's going to be kind of a destination theme for big guilds that have something to offer other players in the game. And if that could be represented through not only maybe the colors on your deed, but also if we can take over a corner of a citadel, that says something. Like you're somebody, right?
And just to add to that, the incentive for guild members to play even harder, besides what they're going to be playing to earn from how Gala Games is set up, but the guild themselves can help Gala in that way to keep the player base retention, and then also add more people to the community, because we'll have our own reward systems on how to pay and reward people, whether it's in-game assets or actual currency, for doing XYZ job, or the length of time you're with a guild, to show your loyalty, and what jobs you take on without even asking, to just help the guild grow.
The guilds are now giving the achievements.
Exactly.
Man.
More money than maybe they're getting from Gala Games from playing. You never know.
Yeah. Earn your ranks up through the achievements or the badges that you get, right? That's super cool stuff.
We know it's interesting because I know Jesse has talked about in the past about the path from the free to play to the pay to earn, and maybe it is the guilds that offer some of that for the people. Maybe it's not just Gala, maybe it's the guilds to their need of these, I guess, junior players who are kind of looking for a path to make some money. We're their avenue into the pay to earn. Like maybe they buy their first deed off of guild earnings.
I mean,
earned by supporting a guild.
You might be a part of a bunch of different guilds, right? So you got all these badges from all these different guilds, man. Like offering value through that. Maybe there's some collecting in there somewhere. I mean, once you get deep into it, who knows? You can go anywhere with that stuff.
Yeah, that could be a thing if there's partnerships between guilds that are established. There can be a certain quest or some sort that you'll have to. You could acquire something that's needed on both sides of each guild to then to potentially earn more or to get a certain weapon. It could be you go deep with it.
Yeah, you got the badge, so now the smart contract recognizes that, and you get the discount.
Right.
I'm not speaking for Rome here at all, because I'm just one member, but I don't know that you're going to be running around with the Rome badge as well as another guild's badge. I don't know if that's what they're going to put there.
I second that notion.
Let me get that flag back right quick.
I was just entertaining the thought.
I just said you could have a gravy gang badge from right with your
get out of here.
Your own badge.
I think that's the difference between guilds and associations. If you set up as an association, I'm reading the 5 Realms right now, and in that they both have guilds and they also have associations. And so you can be a member of an association, but also be a member of a guild. So the associations would be like, we're kind of neutral, but if you're into crafting like jewelry or potions, then there's reason to be affiliated. And so that would be cool. But guild quests, the things you're talking about, are basically like guild assigned quests. In the absence of NPCs, the way they're kind of describing the way that Mirandus is to be built, who better than the guilds to be able to issue these quests or associations? Yeah.
Absolutely. That's great. That's good stuff.
The reason I was asking for this, The reason I was asking you for this flag, Jesse, is because my first MMO, obviously that imprints on you in a certain way, right? And that was Guild Wars. And in Guild Wars, you got a cloak that showed off your guild representation. And you didn't have a cloak if you weren't in a guild. And when you went to your guild hall and you went to guild battles, the banners all ran your cloak. And personally, I'm looking for an opportunity to have a cloak with our flag on it. So that's where my head's at as far as differentiating guild members. I mean, you could go with a buckle or a badge or a shoulder, emblem or a shield emblem or something like that. But to me, the cloak was always, just because it was my first MMO and that's how it was, the cloak is always a big deal.
They could all indicate different ranks in each guild. Like cloak could be the highest, for example.
Yeah, maybe you're not able to just rock a cloak like with the biker clubs, right? You can't just rock the whatever they call that thing, that vest they wear. You can't just rock that.
Prospect.
Yeah, brilliant, man.
Blood in, blood out.
But the idea of these colors that we're talking about, I think if we even pushed it past your property, right? So if you've got your guild or your building and you have your colors there, what if you have so many deeds on a certain amount of geography and maybe the bridges have your flag on the bridges, kind of signifying your ownership of that area of land? I think there's something there, and maybe it shows up with guilds, maybe it shows up with the Viscount houses, the Archduke houses, but there's a way to take it past your deed and make it kind of your area. And I think that further it creates a potential for further kind of the economic PvP stuff. Like, you're coming on Rome's land to come take our resources. So there's something there that I think could be expanded on, and how the guilds interact and what their property is. Bigger than a deed.
Yeah, the sales on boats, man. How about that?
Yeah,
Great.
like don't mess with the Rome trade routes, because there'll be flags on them.
Yeah.
Beware.
I know for sure me and Fancy both would love to have our flags lining trade routes.
It's an awesome idea.
Hey, Fancy.
Well, you got heads on the top of them piked.
Oh,
Please,
don't give me the ideas. Don't give me the ideas, Punjab. Don't do it.
heads on pikes, please. But Fancy, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, if there's room for guild cloaks, I also think it would be sensible to have like deed owner cloaks and Gala gold owners.
Sure.
Yeah, I think there should be a way to identify node holders in game, Gala gold holders in game. Hopefully they have the models are so basic, they should be able to create a lot of distinction through the clothes that we wear. And I think that also helps create the community, right? So from a guild perspective, repping your colors as a guild, that's always been a thing in MMOs. It's just the way it is. And I think they'll have the same thing for kingdoms now. There'll probably be people who want to rep their colors for their kingdoms, or some sort of maybe helmet style, or even if one of the things that we haven't talked about in relation to guilds or kingdoms is, will there be a lock on visual styles? So will one kingdom have a lock on a certain visual style that can only be created in their kingdom? And then it creates some cultures within the different kingdoms, and how do the guilds show up within those different cultures?
Right. We have a question on the screen by Igor.
I didn't want to. Banjo was going on a nice one there, so I didn't want to.
Yeah, sure.
Because you just brought up something that just piqued my thoughts as far as where's the. So yeah, say a guild affiliates itself with a certain citadel, right? So how does the guild, how do the players show off representation of their citadel while showing off representation of their guild? So is the cloak the guild and maybe the badge is the citadel, or do they have that boring little thing above their name, that they do in a lot of MMOs to differentiate you, or what's it going to be? Are you going to have a certain type of belt buckle or whatever? And then going to the comments, yeah, iGuard, Rome could ask for Rome-specific NFT leather sandals having magic roaming pace increase only for guild members. I think that just kind of goes along with the conversation. It was just a good comment. I think that, guilds having an item that they can spread around their guild to show representation, as well as giving buffs out to their members if they become powerful enough to do so. I think those are great ideas.
Yeah, and go ahead, Justin.
I was going to say, each time we talk about the kingdoms and what you were saying, Banjo, earlier about there perhaps being designs that are specific to a kingdom, I can't help but think of a kingdom being far off. I almost don't want to be able to travel an hour and get to the next kingdom. I want it to be kind of like, you remember in Game of Thrones when the king was going up to Winterfell to ask him to be the hand of the king. That was like a month journey for them to get up there. That was a haul. And so what that would mean is, if you did see someone that was flying colors that are only from a specific kingdom, and you happen to see them, it's like, wow, that dude came a long way. It's not like he just showed up and he goes back tomorrow kind of thing. That would make it even better when you saw unique designs from a kingdom, if they were far enough apart that it meant something to run into them.
I hope we see that as well, man. I believe population might count in that, but to get there's only so many deeds, right? And get them deeds that far apart is kind of ideal, man. So I know they got the citadels in specific locations already, like they're already there for them. So I'm hoping it's like that. It's separated by water and fields far away.
Yeah,
but
it's a journey.
Yes.
Game creep always reduces travel time over time, which kind of stinks, because I think some games start out with the idea that it should take a journey to get from one place to another. within the guild chat, we had this conversation this week around, wouldn't it be neat if these kingdoms were so far apart that you actually needed a kind of a resupply line to get from one end to the other? So you travel to an outpost, you hitch your horse, you grab a different horse that you already have staged there, and you move on. It's just so you can get across the map. And I think where the games go wrong in the long run, and it's done out of efficiency, I get it, but as soon as we start fast travel from kingdom to kingdom, or it takes 2 seconds to get from one place all the way across the other side of the map, that kind of destroys that feeling. But I'm with you, Jesse. I'm totally on board with it should take some time to get from one point to another, especially in a game that's driven by resources.
I think
right?
McCarthy would be with you on that too.
And it's
Because let me just finish this thought, Jesse.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Is the idea that we've talked about resources, and as a guild, how do we, look at resources? And if I can just find out there's this great gold resource, all the way across the map, and in 2 seconds be there, it takes away from the idea of like, how is this going to work out when everyone could just jump on the best resource that's there right that time?
Yeah, exactly. And if we're talking about lore of kingdoms and we're trying to really create this medieval simulation, well, what were kingdoms? Kingdoms were essentially what you had the power to control and the reach that you had. And once you got to a place where it's like, you know what, that's not valuable enough, it's too far away, that's usually what separated kingdoms and ideas. And so hopefully they're not just sitting on top of each other like that and like right next door, how you doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I've kind of started to trust, just from what I've seen from Mike McCarthy, I've started to kind of trust his abilities or his perspective in this area. I think he is going to protect us in that way. He just seems like that's where his head's kind of at. I also, we've all played all these games where, so one game it's a journey to get someplace, and another game it's easy. And we all know that the game where it was a journey and it was difficult to go to a far off location, that made it way more epic and way more valuable. And people tend to, when you look at it on paper and you say, oh, did it take you 3 hours to get over here? Oh, I don't want to play that game, but when you're actually playing the game, I think all of us have spent, maybe a day trying to get someplace in a video game before, you know what I mean? So it's valuable.
One thing I think that could aid that is adding barges in the ports and boat update and having like massive rivers that can't be passed, or they can only be passed in like little areas. And when they add the big barges, you could literally get companies or individuals just controlling like the trade across the river in like a fleet of vessels.
The ferryman.
Yeah.
The boatman.
ESO had a lot of territory and a lot of geography, and you had to explore and get to the fast track areas, right? But the initial exploration was fantastic. So I love the idea of getting out there and having to find and take a long journey to find some place. Where it gets boring is if there's nothing in between, right? If it's just a road that you have to run down till you get to the other side and there's not something to see or random encounters along the way, then it loses some of the allure. But if you can keep it compelling between point A and point B, then there's something there, and I think the journey is the fun part.
That was
Absolutely.
one thing that I don't know if anybody else ever played it in the cast here, but there was a game called Arcade where it was more of a sandbox type, and they kind of built in supply lines as a thing. So you would go on these long trade runs, right? But it was open world PvP. So these long trade runs weren't boring. You know what I mean? Because the players created, the conflict of the players created the content. Without that, you're going to have some kind of engaging PvE experiences that are going to have to pop up on these journeys. Otherwise, like you say, it's not going to work. It'll just get boring, and you're going to have to just, like you say in ASO, you go and unlock something so you don't have to make that journey again, because you're not going to want to make it over and over again. It's not challenging every time.
Not only that, but you got to get there before dark.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
A lot of variables to take into consideration when we're talking about these different types of things. But we're nearing the 2-hour mark here, and we have, last but not least, if not any other comments on this current question, we can jump on to the next one. And so just to preference this question, it's difficult, in my opinion, to not have the economical conversation of play to earn and what could be made around NFT gaming, because that's the whole foundation of it, is you're playing to earn. So not to just harp on the economic and revenue generation part of it, but it's intertwined so deeply that it needs to be talked about. So with this question is, can guilds economically / physically war with each other? Because what war always was, had the component of war was to win, to then have a larger portion of land, or a larger army to then do more of that. It's just a perpetual cycle, and revenue, and it's a profitable it's an profitable model for large groups of people or kingdoms or whatnot. So with that said, can guilds economically? Yep, go ahead.
I think you got a nice forest surrounding your guild there, and it'd be a shame if somebody came by and chopped it down.
Oh yeah.
Oh, we can go up on that list. So on my next podcast, Wolf and I normally does them with me. Thank you for that. And we were going to go deep into horses on the next one, right?
Is that what it is? I was listening to you guys, and I couldn't tell who was who.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know who the other person was. That's
yeah,
good.
Wolf and I call him Wolfie. But he always hangs out with me and does them. He's fun. Fun guy. He's pretty busy guy, man. He's into all kinds
Very
of
talented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Into all kinds of stuff, man. He's in all kinds of stuff. But we were going to go deep into horses. And when you talk about, physically warring with each other and PvPing, all that means is competition, right? So now you can have citadels giving out competitions. So if you wanted to say Olympics, so Polite wants to throw up rewards, or all these citadels just kind of chip in and have these great rewards for these competitions between guilds or alignments of citadels. And with horses, we were going to go into, a lot of people like, what can you do with the horses, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do, but can you go into like horse races? Like kind of like the Z racing. I'm like, that ain't going to fit with McCarthy that well, because, nobody did horse races in that time. I don't know. If you want to go to Rome, you can do chariot races, but we were thinking maybe jousting, right? You do jousting competitions, and and like citadels might have their greatest, a citadel might have a competition with their guilds or with all the guilds in that allegiance. And whoever wins that is the champion that fights against all the citadels, right? The citadels champions. And you can just do great things with that kind of PvP competition wise, just with guilds in itself. I think last podcast I did, we talked about, somebody just mentioned in snowball fights, right? That could be like a winter event, just something cheesy where you would have snowball hits. I don't know, something weird like that between citadels, just ways to do competitions. And then you can involve guilds in those competitions without physically, hey, let me go beat this guy and take his stuff.
Yeah, I guess whether they're called wars or just competitive battles, it'll be up in the air. But I guess horses would definitely play a role in battling. If you get to the enemy faster, you can just flanking. You can do all these different like tactics for war with horses. But are we going to be able to war with each other? Is that even on the table? Or is there going to be mass battles of 500 on a screen? So 250 versus 250, and that's all you can see on your screen. And there's going to be, and how does that end? What are the complications or the like? Do you lose in-game resources, or is there like, how does it work? That would be an interesting thing. And if we can at all, and what it would look like economically, it would be that would be fun.
Based on some of the things that McCarthy has shared about what he imagines an arena could be, I think some of the same mechanics could be placed within guild structure, meaning like if you have a guild and you are in agreement with another guild and that you are at war, then you might be able to put things in place like that because it's a contract. But then again, it becomes a contract between guilds rather than individuals. So then how does that layer of agreement actually tack on? I think that guilds, to have economical war with each other, will have to be able to do things like be able to provide pricing, maybe a discount for their guild members, normal prices for anyone else that shows up, and either higher prices or no prices at all. If you're for a competing guild, can you actually keep another guild from entering your deed? Can you create alliances so that you're aligned with these other guilds and therefore you are collectively at war with these guilds or other guilds as a result of that. So I think that it'll be interesting if they can work in the economic factor. But if they're going to do that, then you have to be able to factor prices the way that you can charge based on relationship.
We've been having some fun in chat with this idea. And I think it was Bonafide who came up with the idea of reconomics. And I think that's a perfect way to identify this guild on guild economic battle is reconomics. And we're coming up with our own terms. I don't know if we want to release them yet because we're going to put our stamp on kind of economic versus economic warfare. You heard it now.
Absolutely. That was our man Blarg the Zombie that was coming up with all those. He came up with some really, really good stuff, man. And it's like you said, I don't know if we're fully ready to release it yet, but the economic warfare is really piquing my interest because of the lack of so-called physical warfare within the game. How are we going to deal with conflict resolution, without being able just to simply go over and shoot somebody? Well, we're going to have to go after you economically then. And that is actually starting to get me really excited now, So
it's a whole new game. It really is a whole new game. And I don't see how Gala, they're going to go through a kind of a customer satisfaction issue as guilds and people, not even just guilds. I don't want to say it's guilds. Whales, other people start getting competitively very aggressive against other people for resources and financial stuff. I think Gala does have a reckoning coming as far as managing through that within the community, but I don't see how this game lives without that happening. It's not kumbaya when there's money involved. People are going to want to make money. They're going to be number one. They're going to want to gather all the resources for themselves. So this is a reality that I don't think you can avoid.
Well, I think it can be avoided through sleep, the vitality, is that what it's called? And then how much weight can you carry? How much weight can your horse carry? So that might play in factors into like how much energy is it going to take for me to get there? How much energy is it going to take for me to carry this back to where I was? So it can be done, but you might need a large group of people too to get there and kind of like, I don't know, acting as ants in a way, just because of weight and you getting tired and needing food. And I think those can act against those provisions.
And then once you get it there, what are storage capacities?
Exactly.
It would almost be pointless to do so much because it will all go to waste without enough storage capacity. And also, I was going to mention it, the length at which people go to non-play to earn games to just win and to be ahead of everybody else, the amount of money that is poured into these games. So without a doubt, there's going to be people who, if they know they can return, make a return, or if just not, it wouldn't even matter because look at the examples we have now before NFT gaming. So that's going to be an interesting.
Well, if you take a resource game like Townstar and make it PvP, that's really what you're going to find in Mirandus, because now in Townstar you can't really compete against the next plot over, or you can't raid their property and do stuff. You can block and do stuff like that, but if you think about the fact that now you have a bunch of different Townstars in Mirandus of people who are doing the resource game, there's going to be some level of competition between the two, and how that shows up is going to be robust. It's going to be huge and fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. I think Ray's right that the players are going to find a way, and ultimately it's going to come up to the ban hammer. What are the devs going to be willing to nerf, and how far are they going to be willing to go with the nerfing? Because we're going to figure out ways to do what we got to do, right? And it's always going to be what they're going to have to change the rules accordingly. And I think it's so exciting and spiritual.
Yeah, this is how guilds can play a role, man. I mean, you put your resources up. Everybody's, just take a bunch of you guys, march like way over here to this farming hamlet, and just farm all their resources around that hamlet and bring it back to yours, right? That's essentially what we're talking about.
And there's going to have to be some interesting ways to rebalance too, because I can also see a scenario where guilds have enough power that if enough guilds came together, they could essentially squeeze an entire guild out of business to the point where you don't even want to be in that guild because you just can't buy anything anywhere.
Yeah, maybe. Management in this zone.
And on the other end of buying things, you got selling things, right? So I mean, we all know what Walmart has done to the world. They come in, undercut the mom and pop, and then once the mom and pops are gone, they raise those prices right on back up. So I mean, if the guild is causing problems, maybe they're just not able to reach that price point in order to be profitable for an extended period of time, and they collapse. You know what I mean? Because of some other guild that has the resources to do so, just undercutting them in every market that they want to get involved in.
Jesus,
I
this
think
game's gonna be
Bonafide
so
is-
fun.
I think Bonafide's trying to pick our guild colors. It sounds like it's going to be Walmart blue and yellow.
Don't forget that smiley face, bro.
It's incentive to maintain good relations across a lot of guilds and associations for sure.
Yeah. Here, there's a question that came up that I thought was pretty cool on a larger scale because we're talking about guilds. But if a citadel is or will have a guild, or maybe not, but just have allegiance, a whole bunch of citizens. But by Jeffrey, we have a question. Jeffrey Nerona. Follow-up question to what we were talking about earlier is that can citadels be on war with one another, like a Fire Nation from the anime? Avatar, right? Thank you for that. The bending of everything. So yeah, that would be pretty interesting. If not guilds being able to war, maybe just the citadels, and would that make guilds obsolete in a way where now you have to choose? Although you can have an underground guild, but would you have to have and rep the colors of a particular citadel to partake in wars? Because the balancing of it all when it comes to play to earn is going to be interesting when you could just declare war and then take all the resources from an area because there's other variables at play where the citadel might be in control or taking resources from there more than the local deed owners who are not part of this citadel or a guild. It's going to be interesting.
And is that a guild-based relationship or allegiance, or is that individual? And can a guild have multiple people that have allegiances to different kingdoms?
Yeah, or can they not be affiliated with no kingdoms and be the sixth monarch themselves, depending on what assets the guilds have? That could not add up to a citadel as far as like land plots, but could be a small.
That's an interesting point you just brought up, right? Just because of the fact that, as far as we know right now, without them creating DAOs, the citadels are pretty much all going to be owned by corporations, right? So you have corporations trying to compete with actual gamers. I mean, as a guild like us that's holding a lot of veteran gamers, bandwidth, are we going to be able to maybe perhaps surpass these citadels who aren't really focused on the game necessarily?
Right. On the economic level, if anything.
Yeah, maybe don't have the gaming experience that we have,
right. Because the more people who are buying and selling and trading amongst a particular guild with not as many plots could generate essentially more if the sales are better, or if there's larger numbers in the guild versus a citadel. You would have to go to a citadel for particular weapons like a Majestic, because only certain plots could be placed on like a larger deeds and things. But I guess at some point you would have to go to a citadel.
I vote Rome for the sixth guild.
If you think about
the sixth citadel monarch,
there may be an opportunity for guilds. If you think about Game of Thrones and the Golden Company, they were a hired bunch of mercenaries, right? So if you think about the Golden Company as it relates to guilds within Mirandus, is there an opportunity for a guild to be sold to the highest bidder, right? The person where that citadel feels like, hey, we need this guild to support us. They have all these assets. And maybe it's less about the people trying to get their buildings placed on the citadel and more about the citadel looking for the guilds that are going to help boost their economic output and their survivability and their protection and things like that.
Listen, see, this was part of this was discussion within Mirandus Farmers, right? So at least, so you have a union. It's a union of all the farms, right? We're all under the same, like a union, like a localized union, right? So a hedge against the monarchs. I'm an American, right? We don't like the monarchs. So what if you could put sanctions? Like you raise the price of food at a specific territory on a citadel if they're acting inappropriate. So, and you're all in union and you're deed owners and you tell your buildings, hey, I don't think anybody's going to have a problem with saying, hey, we're jacking up the food in this area because this citadel king or the community there is acting inappropriate with this and causing war and causing a problem. What's the hedge against these wars with, if there are wars with citadels and causing other people problems? Can you do something to the citadels to like a higher power, if you would? Just I don't know, an idea out there of like throwing sanctions at them with higher costs.
And not only do you have sanction ability, but now you just brought up the idea of actually boycotting the citadel.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very interesting and powerful economic tool that is actually going to be on the table now because of the way these games are going to function.
And it's funny too. Imagine you won't. Let's say you don't even care to get a majestic sword. If you have enough numbers with regular swords, that would kill anyone with a majestic sword. Even if it's a one-hit KO, you got hundreds of people coming at you, and you have only a certain amount of energy. So it wouldn't necessarily matter. You have a majestic. It's more of reputational at that point. If there's going to be some kind of boycotting that takes place. Oh, you can't get a majestic sword. Well, it wouldn't matter, and then the resale value, that might be too expensive for half of the guild members anyways, because they're from the Philippines, or you know how long it would probably take for them to get a majestic sword if the way they play to earn is like a faucet drop of Gala coin or in-game currency. So maybe a majestic anything might not even be necessary if the guild is large enough and are able to affect the economy of the citadel in a way to direct people into your own guild or your own areas.
Speaking of the citadels, the thing that keeps popping in my mind that we really haven't talked about yet is, what do we think will be the motivation and the actual involvement of these citadels, being that we know two of them are owned by corporations. We got Flare and Polyant, and then we have an anonymous group that owns a third one. So the anonymous group probably will be active if they were invested in really in anonymous at this point. So it's not like they're trying to show up and, hey, look, we're a corporation and that's our move and that's what we want to get recognition for. How do we think Flare and Polyant are going to show up within the game and influence the game? Are they looking to put people in place? Are they looking to be active? Or are they really just, is Poly just looking to get their vaults, known? Is Flare just really looking to be top of mind so that we're using the infrastructure? How do we think they're going to show up?
I think you're just showing up as advertisement, just advertising themselves, man. Vaults, the Polyant vaults, though, man. Everybody's going to need that, even including Flare.
Mm-hmm.
That goes back to. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm done.
Okay. Well, that just goes back to, shout out once again to On-Chain Gaming with his idea as far as the DAO and being able to purchase a Citadel. I mean, it goes right back to that. Because we don't know what the incentives are for the corporate Citadels. We don't know what those incentives are. And they're going to act according to their incentives, not according to what's best for the game. And whereas the players, we already know the players are always going to act in the best interest of the game, unless there's a significant personal upside somewhere, you know what I mean? But, and so that's why I would like to see a Citadel or two owned by actual players, if that's possible.
I think the difference is going to be if the person who owns it or who's managing it for the owners is a player, right? If they're not players and it's just an asset in the game that they've bought and they've got it working autonomously, it's going to feel flat. But if you have people who are the owners, who are represented as the leaders, maybe the kings or the queens, and there is some sort of role-playing presence within the Citadel that's going on by the owners of them. Because if it's just something that sits there that makes money, I don't know. It doesn't draw me in. The same as like there might be a story or leaders that might have different strengths or weaknesses, or they might be charismatic or they might be assholes. At the end of the day, you want like a spirit of the kingdom, and a flat business model doesn't do that.
Right. Absolutely right, Banjo. And I tend to think that they are probably going to end up having to hire, or allow somebody to run their Citadels for them, right? Because they're not going to want to do it. But
I'll take the job.
and I personally vote for Banjo to be one of the kings. But
Thanks, man.
I think it comes. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, I mean, at the end of the day, they're still going to own the Citadel, and their incentives are still going to be what's paramount. And if the person who's running the guild, that's running the Citadel, wants to move in a certain direction, they're going to be handicapped by what the corporation actually is incentivized to do, and that's always going to be there.
One of the things I kind of picture is because we've heard that you'll be able, like, some of the in-game music in a tavern might be player owned. Does that mean there's going to be like commercial interruptions? Elliot and flare ads?
Go ahead, put it.
With any of the deeds, they're going to have, the powers you endow to, like, I don't know, 6 people or 5 people. I think, Flair or Pollyann, whoever owns that, the king, they're just going to hand these powers out to these 6 people. And these are the people that's going to run the citadels. And there's going to be, I think there'll be a lot of politics in this too, right? Once you get into the citadels, there'll be a lot of politics between these 6 people and all these building owners, right? And rent charges and things that we're doing. So yeah, you could see like a big community in each citadel, right? So I don't think it'll just be one guy running. I think it'll be these 6 people, and then you'll see politics, and who knows what'll come out of all that.
Yeah, I played Ark Survival for a long time, and there was a lot of politics in that just because of people having to invest. I mean, certain dinosaurs took you 2 weeks to raise, right? So the amount of time that people had invested made it to where it was a situation where I heard grown men crying over, getting raided or getting threatened. Rated, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can see Polly or even Flair paying these people, man, because this is going to be a fucking job having to deal with all these people because money's involved.
I think the politics of Mirandus is going to be very deep and engaging because of the economics that are involved. It's going to be a very interesting thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's all something to look forward to as we're here, like we said when we first started, as we're at past the 2-hour mark, and I think it's we could go on forever, and that's why you guys should stay tuned for the 4th episode of the Mirandus Gentry. It's next week, Sunday, same place, same time. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. But we appreciate all the engagement in the chat and all the views if you're watching after the fact. Thank you. And last but not least, our wonderful guest, Punjab. Thank you so much for stopping by. And we encourage other guild members and guild leaders, if you want to call them that, to reach out. If not, we might be coming around your corner of the block and ask if you want to hop on the show. We could always, it would be a free ball type of talking points that you yourself as a guild member and the community could make topic or conversation points. We would want to learn more about you and extend the invitation so we can grow as a big happy family. So with that being said, thank you all, and we're going to wrap this one up for this week. And any other words?
Thank you, everybody. And thank you.
Yeah, guys, thanks. I think this is super important, man. It's super important for Gala to hear this stuff too, because stuff gets lost in them Discord chats, man. I mean, there's miles of thread, right?
Sure.
And the ideas here being an audio library is something easy for them to hear and just be like, let's inquire that, because I think they're going to be building this game for years to come, and we're all going to have so much fun playing this game. I just know it.
Yeah, take us out, Punjab. Take us out.
Peace.
All right, everybody. See you next week. Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Okay.